if you have been battling a chronic illness, if hospitals haven't been able to find the cause, if medications aren't helping, if you wake up tired no matter how well you sleep, if mysterious pains run through your body, this message is for you. What I am about to reveal explains why your body has been attacked and how to permanently shut down these hotels. My name is Nia Wanjiru from Nairobi, Kenya. For 12 years, I served the Kingdom of Darkness. One of my key missions was to contaminate bedrooms, especially those of Christians. I belong to a coven of witchcraft operating throughout East Africa, a network of darkness operating under the spiritual principle of Ephesians 6 verse 1. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. My specific mission was to establish invisible hotels within Christian bedrooms using unsuspecting everyday objects, as 2 Corinthians 11 verse 14 warns us, and this is not surprising, since Satan himself disguises himself as an angel of light. These hotels were not physical structures visible to the naked eye, they were one of the spiritual portals to demonic strongholds. We grant lawful access, as described in Ephesians 4 verse 27, to not give the devil a foothold. We use this granted space to monitor, attack, and afflict believers where they slept. I excelled in this dark work. Sorcerer lords, seasoned operators of darkness for decades, trained me in their arts. They taught me to identify vulnerable Christians, those who perhaps unconsciously had not fully donned the armor of God. Ephesians 6 verse 11, they taught me to study their habits, their homes, their bedrooms, searching for any point of entry or neglect. They taught me the perverse art of turning ordinary objects into spiritual weapons, corrupting the mundane for evil purposes, and they taught me to establish hotels designed to remain active for years, operating in the shadows of ignorance. For as Hosea 4:6 declares, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. During my time in the coven, I personally established hotels in over 100 Christian homes. I watched as believers fall ill. I watched them go to the hospital and receive no answers. I watched them pray and play without success. Their supplication seemed blocked, a reality foreshadowed in Daniel 13. I watched their health deteriorate year after year, and I knew why. The hotels remained, the gates remained open, they give way, and as long as these hotels stand, his believers will never be free, captive to a trap he cannot see. But Jesus Christ has truly set me free, completely and gloriously, as John 8:36 proclaims. If, therefore, the Son sets you free, you will be truly free. Now, as a person delivered from this kingdom, I obey the command of Ephesians 5:11, have nothing to do with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. In this testimony, I reveal 3 hidden hotels that witches establish in Christian bedrooms to keep believers in perpetual sickness. These are hotels next to which most Christians unknowingly sleep each night. These are the hotels that drain their health, block their healing, and give demons a legal ground or place to afflict their bodies with diseases that doctors cannot diagnose and medicine cannot cure. Let me begin by explaining how these bedroom hotels operate in the kingdom of darkness. The bedroom is the most strategic room in the house, a place of profound vulnerability. It is where you sleep, where you dream, where your mind is most exposed and your natural defenses lowered. It is a time of unique spiritual activity, as Job 33 hours 15 minutes minus 16 implies. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when men are given over to a deep sleep, when they are asleep on their beds, then he gives them warnings. It is in this state of rest that the enemy often strikes, seeking to sow seeds while men sleep, as in the parable of Matthew 13:25. When we sought to destroy the health of a Christian, we strategically avoided direct confrontation in the place of worship. We knew better because Psalm 847 declares that the righteous go from strength to strength in the paths of God. The collective anointing, the covering of united prayer, Matthew 18:19-20, and the manifest presence of God in this sanctified environment creates a fortress of protection, making our success exceedingly difficult. Nor did we attack them during active prayer, James 5:16 affirms that the fervent prayer of the righteous is powerful and effective, and in this posture, believers are covered by the blood of Jesus, protected by faith, and their God-given authority is activated. We learn through crushing defeats that attacking a Christian in the midst of prayer was a futile battle and lost from the start. Instead, we targeted them in their bedrooms while they slept. This was the time when their conscious minds were at rest, and if they were not disciplined, their spiritual vigilance could weaken, creating a state of vulnerability. This was our window of opportunity, our season for infiltration, as described in Jobs 4:13. In my thoughts, during the visions of the night, when men are given over to a deep sleep, we sought access. It was at this time that we could establish demonic strongholds, exploiting any unguarded territory. The primary method of access was through spiritual hotels. These hotels were not physical constructions. We did not enter a room to build something with our own hands, an obvious impossibility. Instead, we operated under the principle found in 2 Kings 174:1, where foreign objects and practices became a trap. We used what was already present. We identify objects that believers had personally brought into their private sanctuaries, objects they trusted, used daily, and considered harmless. We then pervert their purpose, transforming these ordinary objects into spiritual weapons, dedicated against their owners, corrupting what was meant for blessing into a channel of curse. Once an object was consecrated as an altar, it functioned as a portal, a legal gateway, and a spiritual gateway connecting the physical and demonic realms. Through this opening of the gods, we could orchestrate the affliction of sickness, affliction, disease, and all manner of physical torment. The believer, deprived of this revelation, remained in confusion. They consulted doctors, underwent tests, and tried medicines, but saw no lasting results because the root of the infirmity was not merely natural, it was a spiritual attack, routed and sustained by the untreated altar in their chamber, a direct violation of the holiness commanded in Deuteronomy 23:14. The hotels gave us legal access. This is vital to understand. In the spiritual realm, demons cannot attack whomever they want. There must be legal ground, there must be a point of entry, there must be something that gives them the right to operate. The bedroom hotels provided this legal ground. Once the hotel was established, we had the right to send affliction. The believer had unwittingly given permission by keeping that object in their room. This is what I did for 12 years. I specialized in infiltrating bedrooms. I studied Christians, I looked at what they brought into their rooms, and when I identified the right objects, I established hotels, and once those hotels were in place, those believers became sick and remained sick, no matter their prayers, no matter their fasting, no matter their deliverance sessions, they could not be healed because the hotel remained, the gate remained open. Now, let me talk about the 3 most powerful bedroom hotels we used to keep Christians sick. The first hidden hotel is the mirror hotel. Mirrors are not just reflective surfaces. In the spiritual realm, mirrors are portals, gateways between the physical and spiritual worlds. When a mirror is positioned a certain way in a bedroom, especially directly facing the bed, it becomes an active hotel that we in the kingdom of darkness use to watch over and afflict sleeping Christians. Let me explain how this works. When you sleep, your mind is active. Even though your body is resting, your spiritual self is engaged. You dream, you process, you are spiritually vulnerable, and if a mirror faces your bed, your mind is projected into that mirror every night. We could access you through that projection. We could monitor your dreams, we could plant images, we could send spirits of infirmity into your body while you sleep, settling in specific organs, joints, and systems. I specialized in mirror hotels. I was trained to identify believers with mirrors facing their beds, and once I identified them, I would establish a hotel on that mirror in the spiritual realm. The moment the hotel activated, the believer's health began to deteriorate. They started experiencing mysterious symptoms, persistent fatigue, aches and pains shifting from one place to another, and illnesses that doctors couldn't diagnose, and this is what made mirror hotels so effective. The Christian would never suspect the mirror, they would go to the hospital, get tests done, take medication, go to Deliverance, but they would never think of removing the mirror from the bedroom, so the hotel remained, the gate remained open, and the illness continued. Let me tell you about Sister Grace Daracha. She was a prayer warrior in the church, a woman who interceded for hours every day, but for 7 years, she battled chronic fatigue and joint pain that no doctor could explain. She had been to 5 different hospitals, she had tried traditional medicine, she had gone to church deliverance sessions, nothing worked. I was assigned to her case while I was still in the coven. My job was to maintain the hotel that kept her sick, and the hotel was a mirror, a large mirror hanging on the wall directly opposite her bed. She had hung it herself 10 years earlier because she liked to see herself when she woke up. She had no idea what she had done. When I first accessed her room in the spirit realm, I saw the hotel clearly. It was massive. Surveillance spirits were imposed on the mirror. Every night it watched her sleep. They entered her dreams, and every night, they sent spirits of infirmity into her body, specifically into her joints and energy systems. I observed it for months. I saw her wake up exhausted every morning even though she had slept for 8 hours. I saw her struggle to get out of bed because her knees and elbows hurt so much. I saw her taking painkillers that only temporarily relieved the symptoms, and I saw her praying. She prayed fervently, she recited healing scriptures, she used oil healing, but nothing changed because the hotel remained. One night, something changed. Sister Grace had a dream. In the dream, she saw herself sleeping in the room, but in the dream, there were creatures standing in front of the mirror, staring at her, dark figures with glowing eyes. They watched her, studied her, and when she awoke from the dream, she was terrified. She didn't understand what she had seen, but she knew it was real. The next morning, she called her pastor. She described the dream to him, and the pastor, possessing spiritual discernment, said something that changed everything. He said, "Sister Grace, do you have a mirror facing your bed?" She said, "Yes." He said, "Remove it today, right now. This mirror is a portal, cover it or remove it completely." She obeyed. That same day, she took the mirror down and removed it from the room. She placed it in her storeroom, covered with a cloth, and that night, neither I nor the other spirits slain to her could reach it. The hotel was gone, the portal was closed. We tried to restore it, but we couldn't because she had removed the physical object that gave us legal access. Within 3 days, her energy began to return. The chronic fatigue that had plagued her for 7 years began to disappear. Within 2 weeks, the joint pain was completely gone. Within a month, she was back to full strength. Those doctors were shocked. They couldn't explain it, but in the spiritual realm, we knew exactly what had happened. She had closed the hotel, she had closed the gate, and we no longer had legal access to her body. This is the power of a mirror hotel, and Sister Grace's testimony is not unique. Let me tell you about another case. Brother Emmanuel was a young businessman from Montbassa. He was 32 years old, successful, and active in his church, but for 2 years, he had been experiencing something terrifying. Every night, he had the same nightmare. In the dream, he saw himself lying in bed, and dark figures stood around him, watching him. They never spoke, they never moved, they just stood there staring. He would awake from his dreams drenched in sweat, his heart pounding, and throughout the day, he felt watched, monitored, as if there were unlit eyes on him everywhere. His productivity at work declined, and his relationships suffered. He became paranoid and anxious. He went to his pastor for counseling. His pastor prayed for him several times, but the nightmares continued. I wasn't directly assigned to Brother Emmanuel, but I knew about his case because the witch who was watching him worked in our coven. Her name was Wanjiku. She had set up a mirror hotel in his room, 3 years earlier, shortly after he moved into his apartment. The mirror had been built into his closet, a large mirror with sliding doors facing directly onto his bed. Brother Emmanuel had never given it a second thought. It came with the furniture when he rented the place, but in the spiritual realm, that mirror was a massive portal. Every night, watchful spirits stood before him and projected themselves into his dreams. They appeared as dark figures, shadows, observers. Their mission wasn't just to watch him, it was to break him mentally, to fill him with fear, to make him feel never safe, never alone, never at peace. This tactic worked for 2 years. Brother Emmanuel's mental health deteriorated. He began avoiding sleep because he was afraid of nightmares. He would stay awake until 3 or 4 in the morning. Only when exhaustion overwhelmed him would he finally fall asleep, and when he slept, the nightmares would return. Then one Sunday, a minister was invited to preach about spiritual portals in homes. The minister spoke specifically about mirrors and how they could be portals for monitoring spirits. Brother Emmanuel's spirit touched Sadie. Something inside him said, "This is you, this is what's happening to you." After the service, he went straight home. He entered his room and stared at the closet mirror. For the first time, he saw it differently. He felt an oppression emanating from it. He felt the weight of something dark attached, and without hesitation, he covered the mirror with a bedsheet. He used tape to secure the sheet so the mirror was completely hidden. That night, for the first time in 2 years, he slept through the night without a single nightmare. Dark figures did not appear. The feeling of being watched was gone. The oppression lifted. The next day, he removed the wardrobe from his room completely and replaced it with one without a mirror, and from that day on, the nightmares never returned. His peace was restored. His mental clarity returned, and his productivity at work skyrocketed. His relationships healed. In the spiritual realm, Wanjiku lost all access to it. The portal was closed. The hotel was removed, and he could no longer project a spirit of surveillance into his dreams. This is what mirror hotels do. It's not just about physical illness, it's about mental torment, spiritual oppression, and emotional destruction. If you have a mirror facing your bed, you are giving the enemy a weapon against your mind, emotions, and body. That's why the first thing you should do is check your room. If you have a mirror directly facing your bed, that mirror is a portal. It gives the enemy access to your health, your sleep, and your spiritual life. You must remove it or reposition it immediately. Don't wait. Don't think it's harmless. In the spiritual realm, this mirror is an active hotel used against you every night. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 4:4, "For in whose case the god of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers." But even believers can have their minds attacked when they give the enemy legal access through portals like mirrors. When you remove the mirror, you remove the access, you close the portal, and your mind, your sleep, and your health come under God's protection. And I want you to do something right now. In the comments below, write this: "I close every mirror portal in my room." Write it now, because when you make this declaration publicly, you are giving notice to the kingdom of darkness that you are no longer ignorant. Don't just watch this video and move on. Participate. Write it in the comments: "I close every mirror portal in my room." Do it now because your breakthrough is tied to your declaration. Now, let me tell you about the second hidden hotel. The Electronics Hotel. This one is more subtle but just as powerful. Many Christians they sleep with phones, tablets, or laptops next to their beds, on nightstands, under pillows, on mattresses, and they have no idea that these devices, when positioned in a certain way and used for certain purposes before sleep, become hotels that we use to drain their health and implant disease. Here's how the electronic device hotel works. Electronic devices emit frequencies, you naturally know that. But what most Christians don't understand is that these frequencies create vibrations in the spiritual realm, and these vibrations attract certain spirits, specifically the spirits of restlessness, the spirits of anxiety, and the spirits of infirmity. When you scroll through your phone late at night, especially viewing unedifying content, watching certain videos and engaging in certain conversations, you open spiritual gateways, creating entry points. The moment you place that phone next to your bed and fall asleep, those entry points remain open, the frequencies continue, the vibrations continue, and the spirits attracted by what you watched or read now have access to your body while you sleep. I was trained to identify Christians sleeping with electronic devices near their heads. We called them tech hotels. Once I identified a believer with this habit, I would establish a hotel on their device, not on the device itself, but on the spiritual frequency the device emitted, and through that frequency, I could send specific spirits directly into their bodies. The most common affliction we sent through these electronic hotels was insomnia and nervous system disorders. Believers would begin to experience sleepless nights, their minds would race, their hearts would pound. They would wake up several times a night, and during the day, they experienced anxiety, headaches, and a general malaise they couldn't explain. And here's what made this hotel so effective: most Christians would never connect their illness to their phone. They would blame stress, they would blame work, they would blame circumstances, but they would never think to move their phone away from their bed. So at night the hotel remained, the gate remained open, and the affliction continued. Let me tell you about Pastor Michael. He pastored a church in Kampala, a city near TB. He was a man of God, preaching powerful messages and leading his congregation with authority, but in private, he was suffering. For 3 years, he had battled severe insomnia. He would lie in bed for hours, unable to sleep. His mind would race with uncontrollable thoughts, and when he finally drifted off, he would wake up hours later, his heart pounding, his body covered in sweat. He went to see doctors. They gave him sleeping pills, but the pills only made him drowsy without allowing him to rest. They diagnosed an anxiety disorder and prescribed medication. He took the medication, but it didn't solve the problem. He was still exhausted, his ministry suffered. His preaching lacked its power because he was operating on empty. I wasn't personally assigned to Pastor Michael, but a witch from Montcoven was. Her name was Patience. She specialized in attacking pastors, and her main weapon was the electronic device hotel. Pastor Michael had a habit: every night before going to bed, he would lie down and scroll through his phone for at least an hour. He would read the news, watch videos, reply to messages from church members, and then, when he was finally ready to sleep, he would place his phone on his nightstand just 15 centimeters from his head and close his eyes. What Pastor Michael didn't know was that Patience had established a hotel on his phone's frequency. Every night, as he scrolled, she and her assigned spirits monitored what he watched and read, and when they fell asleep with his phone so close to his head, they sent spirits of restlessness and anxiety directly into his mind and nervous system. This went on for 3 years. Pastor Michael prayed. He played. He went to deliverance services, but nothing worked because he never dealt with the hotel. He never moved his phone. He never broke the habit of giving the enemy access. Then one day, a prophet visited his church. After the service, the prophet took Pastor Michael aside and said something very specific. He said, "Pastor, the Lord is showing me that you must remove all electronic devices from your bedroom at night. Don't sleep with your phone next to your head. The enemy uses it as an entry point." Pastor Michael was skeptical. He found the message strange, but he respected the prophet, so he obeyed. That very night, he left his phone in the living room. He went to bed without it, and for the first time in 3 years, he slept through the night for 6 hours straight without interruption. When he woke up the next morning, he felt rested, his mind was clear, his body felt refreshed. He continued this practice. Every night, he left his phone in a different room, and within weeks, his insomnia had completely disappeared, his anxiety vanished, his heart palpitations stopped, her energy returned. Her preaching became powerful again. In the spiritual realm, Patience was furious. She tried to restore the hotel, but she couldn't because Pastor McKen had removed the device that gave her access. The physical device was no longer near her body at night. The portal was closed. This is the power of the electronic device hotel. But let me tell you about another person who broke free from this hotel. Her name was Nimano. She was a 28-year-old teacher from Kigali. She loved her job, she loved her students, and she loved God. But for 18 months, she had been battling something that made no sense. Every night around 2 o'clock a.m., she would wake up with her heart racing, not just beating fast, but pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands would tremble, her body would shake, and she would feel a sense of dread, as if something terrible was about to happen. She went to see cardiologists. They ran every imaginable test, ECG, echocardiogram, stress test. Everything came back normal. Her heart was perfectly healthy. But the episodes continued night after night. At 2 a.m., her heart would pound, her body would tremble, and she would lie there terrified, unable to understand what had happened during the day. She functioned normally, no symptoms, no problems, but as night fell, fear took hold. She dreaded going to sleep because she knew what would happen. 2 a.m., the pounding, the terror, the helplessness. A witch in a nearby coven had established an electronic device hotel on Namo. The mission was simple: send spirits of terror through Namo's phone frequency while she slept. Namo was in the habit of falling asleep while watching videos on her phone. She would lie in bed, phone in hand, and scroll until her eyes grew heavy. Then she would fall asleep with the phone still on her chest or next to her pillow, and that phone, with its constant connection, its constant frequency, became the entry point. Every night at 2 a.m., spirits of fear and panic were sent through that frequency directly into her heart. It made her heart race, her body trembled, and her mind filled with irrational terror. The attacks were so precise, so consistent, that Nimino began to believe she was losing her mind. One evening, she attended a Bible study at church. The teacher that night spoke about spiritual warfare and how demons gain access through entry points into our lives. He mentioned electronic devices and how they can become portals if not handled correctly. He said, if you sleep with your phone next to your body, you give the enemy access to your rest, your dreams, and even your physical health. Nimino felt something stir in her mind. She had never thought of her phone as a spiritual issue. She thought it was just a device. But that night, she decided to try something. She went home to charge her phone in the living room and went to bed without it for the first time in years. That night, 2 a.m., came and went, no heartbeat, no trembling, no terror. She slept soundly until morning. When she woke up, she couldn't believe it. For the first time in 18 months, she had slept peacefully. She continued the practice. Every night, she left her phone in another room. And within a week, the episodes had completely stopped. Her heart was fine, her sleep restored, the terror had disappeared, and when she went back to the doctor for a follow-up appointment, she told him what had happened. He looked at her, smiled, and said, I can't explain it medically. But whatever you did, it worked. In the spiritual realm, the tormented witch lost her point of access. The hotel of electronic devices was removed. The frequency was no longer available, and the spirits sent out every night at 2 a.m. had nowhere to land. This is the power of the hotel of electronic devices, and that's why you need to be vigilant. Your phone isn't just a device. In the spiritual realm, it's a frequency, it's a vibration, and if you're not careful, it can become a portal the enemy uses to access your health, your sleep, and your peace. The Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:22, abstain from every form of evil. This includes the seemingly innocent habit of sleeping with your phone next to your body. When you remove the device, you remove the access. When you create boundaries, you create protection, and your body responds to that protection with healing and rest. If you sleep with your phone, tablet, or laptop next to your bed, you're giving the enemy a gateway into your health. You are allowing frequencies and vibrations that attract spirits of infirmity to operate while you sleep. You must remove these devices from your bedroom at night, or at least keep them away from your bed. Don't sleep with them on your nightstand, don't sleep with them under your pillow. Remove them completely. And now, if you have experienced sleepless nights, if you have woken up with anxiety, if your mind races at night and you can't rest, write this in the comments. I remove every electronic device from my bedroom. Write it now because your statement has power. Your sleep is about to be restored. I have to be honest, telling these stories is difficult because I remember being on the other side. I remember celebrating when someone remained bound, when their prayer didn't work, when their breakthrough was blocked. I remember the satisfaction I felt when a Christian would fall ill and couldn't understand why, and now I see the damage I've caused, and I want to undo every piece. Now let me tell you about the third hidden hotel, the Hotel of Inherited Objects. This is the most dangerous of the three because Christians don't bring these objects into their rooms themselves. They inherit them, they receive them as gifts, They are given by family members unaware of the spiritual significance of these objects, and once these objects are in the room, they become hotels, giving demons generational access to afflict the believer and align everything with illness. Let me explain how inherited objects become hotels in our culture. Inherited objects from deceased relatives are common items: clothing, jewelry, furniture, and decorations. Many Christians receive these objects with good intentions. They want to honor their ancestors. They want to keep the memory alive, but what they don't understand is that many objects carry spiritual ties. If the owner of the object was involved in a traditional religion, if they consulted witches, if they made sacrifices, if they were initiated into secret societies, then that object is contaminated. It carries spiritual baggage, and the moment you bring it into your room, you establish a hotel, giving demons legal access to you. I specialized in tracing inherited objects. When we wanted to afflict an entire family line, we didn't attack each person individually. That would take too much time and energy. Instead, we identify objects passed down through the family, objects owned by an ancestor who had spiritual alliances with darkness, and once we had identified these objects, we activated the hotels attached to them. The moment that object entered the room, the person sleeping there began to experience the same afflictions their ancestors had known, the same illnesses, the same pains, the same mysterious diseases. This is why you see patterns of illness in families, cancer running through bloodlines, heart disease affecting generation after generation, diabetes, hypertension, mental illness. Often, these aren't just genetic problems, they're spiritual problems. They're generational curses reinforced by inherited objects becoming hotels in the bedrooms. Let me tell you about a family I've monitored for years, the Angian family of Kisama. 3 generations of women in this family all suffered from the same mysterious illness, severe migraines lasting for days. Doctors couldn't find the cause, medications provided only temporary relief, and every woman in this family, upon reaching the age of 35, began to experience her migraines. The grandmother had them, the mother had them, and when the daughter turned 35, she started getting them too. It was a pattern, a cycle. And no one could break it. I was assigned to maintain this curse. My job was to ensure that the hotel responsible for this affliction remained active, and the hotel was an object, a wooden stool passed down in the family for over 60 years. It originally belonged to the great-grandmother, who had been a priestess in a traditional shrine before she died. This stool had been used in rituals, it had been consecrated to spirits, it carried all the spiritual contamination, and when the great-grandmother died, the stool was given to her daughter, the grandmother. The grandmother placed it in the room, unaware of what it carried, and immediately, the migraines began. They were so severe that she remained bedridden for days. She went to the hospital, but nothing worked. She prayed, but the migraines persisted. Years later, the grandmother died, and the stool was inherited by her daughter. The mother, she, too, placed it in the room, and the same migraines that her mother had experienced began to afflict her. Exactly the same pattern, the same intensity. Once again, the doctors were baffled. The medicines didn't work, prayers brought temporary relief, but the affliction always returned. When the daughter turned 35 and the migraines began, the family was devastated. 3 generations, the same curse, the same inexplicable illness. They prayed, they played, they went to the deliverance center, but nothing broke the cycle because the hotel remained. The stool was still in the room. Then one day, a visiting minister came to their church. During the service, the Spirit of God gave him a word of knowledge. He called the girl by name and said, "There is an object in your room that belonged to your grandmother. It is a stool, and that stool is cursed. It is the source of migraines in your family. You must remove it from your house and destroy it completely." The girl was shocked. She had never told anyone about the stool. But the word was true. That night, she went home and removed the stool from the room. She didn't just move it to another room, she took it outside, broke it into pieces, and burned it. She prayed over the ashes and declared every curse attached to that broken object in the name of Jesus. From that day on, the migraines complete.